discussion, and I want to get
Okay.
your input on it, but we'll see.
Cool. I also told I told the team at Auth0 or I told my wife who's at Auth0 to message people and tell them that I was doing this in case they want to
Oh,
be
sweet.
in the chat to answer questions if I can't. Who Jess is here, number one. I think she's been waiting. She's from Auth0. So what's up, Jess?
Oh yeah, Jess. Hey. Oh, we're
Yeah.
live right now.
Yeah. Hey, we're live.
I had no idea we were live.
It happened so quickly.
Yeah.
Let's see. Where's my Twitch link? I'm gonna post on Twitter.
I know Jess though. Hi, Jess. Good to see you.
Using Auth0. Cool. I'm gonna just posted a tweet in case people want to find us. But I figured it would be good for them to have somebody, if not maybe multiple people, in the
Nice.
chat to.
Well, that explains. I saw on Twitter, their Auth0, one of the Twitter accounts followed me. I was like, oh, is
Oh,
that a
really?
weird coincidence? Yeah, I was like, is that a weird? Have they seen all the activity I've had where I'm creating all
That's
these Auth0
hilarious.
named repos or something?
That's funny. Yeah, they're like they've got a bot that's like looking for references to their name.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
probably it's probably because of Jess sending that message to everybody.
I got you. Yeah. Cool.
Ben Myers is in the chat. What's up, Ben? What's going on? We'll do just like another minute or two and then officially get started. Heather, I think you said this is public enough. Heather, is it public enough for me to brag about you on stream? Is that vague enough? Is that suspense good enough for everybody? I'll like, okay, cool. So Heather just started in DevRel at shoot. Crap, what's the name? Heather, come back.
I thought you were saying the name was Shoot.
Nope, not that. Crap. What I know it's graph based. I knew it was GraphQL, but there was GraphCMS and it changed names, and the person that I did know at GraphCMS then went to GraphBase, and anyway, confusing things. But yes, GraphBase. And
Nice.
community call and GraphBase Discord tomorrow if anyone is interested. If you have GraphShoot, yeah, sorry. Heather, if you have a link to that, if you want to share in the chat for people, feel free. Yeah, GraphBase Shoot should definitely be a thing. I love saying things incorrectly on stream. It's the best. Oh, but Shoot sounds like a plausible startup. Also
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
CHP.
You never know nowadays, like the names we come up
That's
with.
true.
So.
Yeah. Well, what's the like old JavaScript framework meme thing is like pick a random word, add JS to it, and that's your new framework.
Yeah. My favorite is when we start using food words. Like there's one called cucumber, right?
I've heard of that. I don't remember what it is.
Yeah. Exactly. Like what's the point in naming something that when nobody knows what what it's about?
Let's see. Cucumber JS at cucumber.io. And it's by Smart Bear. I know the company's Smart Bear, but I can't remember what of theirs I knew. Is the leading collaboration platform for BDD. I don't know what BDD is.
Behavior driven development, I think.
Behavior driven development? Okay.
Yeah, behavioral. I'm probably not entirely.
We're all just making up stuff. That's what we get paid to do.
Right. Yes.
Shoot JS. Cucumber part of testing. Yeah, something. Part of the Gherkin tooling. Is that a real thing? Is there really like an umbrella Gherkin? And then is this where we were supposed to go with this conversation? Do y'all want to talk about authentication?
Yeah.
On that note, do you, Brian, want to introduce yourself and then give us a little bit of context about what you want to / we're going to talk about today?
Do I want to introduce myself? No.
Yes. Well, okay. Let me rephrase. Introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then do the other thing that I asked you to do without having the ability to say no.
What was the other thing you asked me to do?
Just tell people what you wanted to talk about, or like what would why are we doing this, I guess.
All right, cool. So, hey everybody, nice to meet you all. I'm Brian Clark. I'm a senior developer advocate at Sneak, which is a developer security platform and tooling. And I've been developing. I'm a web developer, basically. I've been doing that for 10 plus years or so now. And what I want to talk about, and I hit up James about this, is for my job, we are doing this event. So is it okay if I do a little bit it's not for me, it's shameless plug for work a
Yeah,
little
yeah,
bit?
absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
plug away.
It's not too much of a plug because I think this whole
Plug
thing
it.
is interesting, like, problem to try and solve. We are putting on an event, called The Big Fix is what we do. We did one earlier this year, we're planning for the one next year, and it's basically like Hacktoberfest, but for security fixes, okay? And so it's a competition, you participating, you get to redeem, a prize. This last one, we did T-shirts. Can't reveal necessarily what we're gonna do this year, partly because I
That
don't know
means
the
it's gonna be
specifics just yet.
big.
Well, I don't really know all the specifics just yet, so that's why. But we have more fun stuff like that, and, like, whoever's the top, I don't know, 5 or 3 or whatever it may be that fixes the most vulnerabilities, on the scoreboard and everything like that will get other prizes and whatnot. So it's like a hackathon thing. But we need the past instance of it, we didn't have a lot of, ways to support participants in the sense of letting them know, like, what's their current points that they're at, or how do they sit on the leaderboard? Are they in 10th place? Are they in 1st place? That kinda thing. And it was all back of house. It was our first instance of it. So in this iteration of it, myself and another colleague are working on an app that is gonna help with that, uh, and provide that richer experience for participants. Um, the other thing is at the end of it, we do a 24-hour live stream like this where people can come in and we're gonna do presentations and stuff like that. In fact, James spoke at the last one, for us, so
Was that
shout
what
out.
that was what that was at the time? Cool.
Yeah, yeah. Um, speaking of on the spot, if you're interested in talking again, we'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Um,
Send me details.
yeah, yeah. So that's what's going on. So, with that in mind, I'm building this app that's gonna have some type of back end, and I'm using Node, and we're using Vue for the front end, so to give you a little bit of the architecture that we're going through. And what we want to do is we wanna keep it as minimal as possible in terms of, like, what information people have to provide and, like, the whole sign up thing. So, what we landed on is we're doing, like, email, passwordless email magic link, however you wanna name it, that kind of thing. And my immediate thought for any of this was, of course, Auth 0, right? To help out with that. And so as I was going through it, it's been a while since I've focused on authentication, identity, and access management in that space of security. And so I've been kind of brushing off the rust a little bit, for one. And two, I feel like things have changed significantly since I've had that focus area. And there's so many like options that had me feeling kind of overwhelming of like, what's the best way to approach this when it comes to like a simple app like this, even. But I wanted to discuss with James, given this kinda, scenario and project, what are all the options that are available potentially, or what might be the best approach, best practice for such a thing? Alright, I know that was kinda long-winded, but does that kinda help set the stage for the discussion?
For me, yeah. The good thing is it's kind of funny for me to be the one potentially answering questions slash doing our review, considering like I don't work there anymore. But the benefit is we've got make sure I don't miss anybody. There's Jess Temporal. There's Jess, my wife, quick. There's Will Johnson and Corey Weathers, all from the All team in the chat
Oh,
with us.
man, I forgot Corey went over to Auth0. That's
Yeah,
awesome. How could I forget that? How could I
I know.
forget you, Corey? I'm so sorry, man. Like a
The
hurricane.
worst. Yes. Corey Hurricane Weathers. I'll
Yeah.
get to see him in January at that conference, Texas, by the way, which I'm super excited
Sweet.
about. So,
Nice.
um, so yeah, I think all that sounds good to me. So at least we got some people people here to help answer questions in case we get stuck or have questions ourselves. Do
Alright, cool.
you do you want to start conversationally, or do you want to share like pieces of code or setup or anything, or how do you want to start?
Um I guess let's start conversationally, like with questions, right? So,
Cool.
I'm down. I think I've fully grokked the whole passwordless thing, and that aspect of it. Where things get kind of muddy for me nowadays is the protocols and technologies that are used behind the scenes to implement this thing. So we got OpenID Connect, we got OAuth and OAuth 2, and those are the two that are like top of mind for me, but I imagine
Mhm.
that there's more to this too, right? Then there's basic authentication, which is like nobody should be using that kind of thing anymore anyway, so why mention it? But like just to name some.
Yep.
So what I guess maybe you can answer, folks in the chat can help answer. What are the differences for folks that are new to this between those different approaches of authentication?
Yeah. So I'll start with like one thing that I think is important is like the implementation details, specifically in the case of Auth0 and other similar things that take care of this for you. The implementation details, the stuff that's actually really tricky and detailed, are not the most important things. Like I think it's kind of interesting as a developer at some point to have a better understanding of what goes on behind the scenes with that. And so you
Yeah.
could go in and do like Brian Morrison from our Discord added Discord authentication by using OAuth 2 directly based
Mm,
on their documentation and set that up in one of our Learn Build Teach site at a time. We've now replaced that with Supabase.
nice.
But it is kind of an interesting thing to learn more about how that stuff works behind the scenes. But the two things that you'll hear about most is OIDC, OpenID Connect, and then OAuth 2 with I don't know when OAuth, I don't know years, but like OAuth 2 has for the most part replaced OAuth and is what you'll hear about now. So Will is actually got a couple comments in here already. So the big difference between the two is what the intended use case is for the artifact that comes out of that process.
Yeah.
And some of these details I may actually forget now, but basically in the Auth0 case, typically what you're talking about is a token for each. So OpenID Connect, the output of that is going to be a token that is more or less like it's proof of having logged in, and in that sense proof of who the person is.
Mhm.
The but what that doesn't do, so that's authentication is like who you are.
Yep.
Authorization is then what you have access to, which is where OAuth 2 comes in. And people have probably seen this where like you go to an application, it says, hey, you can log in with Twitter. And then it's an app that wants to post to Twitter, and then Twitter pops up with a thing that says like, do you want to let this application have access to your email account and post to your Twitter, etc.? That's the OAuth 2 workflow where you're like granting access to this application to act on your behalf for that application. So it in that sense, it's like authorization in terms of things that the application should have access to.
Gotcha, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Alright. So in the context of the project I'm working on, we have, uh, 2 areas of this where I think we're using it correctly, and maybe folks can keep, in the chat can keep me honest with that, and I like how Corey's like, OAuth is not OIDC. Yeah, I realize that, Corey. Um, and then there was something else that I saw in the chat that was funny. Where'd it go?
Yeah, there's also so while you're thinking, there's also a good reason for where this started. And God, it's been a while since I've done this pitch, but I believe OAuth 2 was first, and it was intended, or which one was which? I forget. It basically one of them came out of the fact that they were using the other for something it wasn't supposed to be used for. I believe, and somebody correct me. OAuth 2, okay, I think Will is helping me. So OAuth 2 was first, and it was intended for that delegated access. What people then started using was using OAuth 2 to then consider the person logged into their application.
Yeah,
And it wasn't intended to actually be used for that use case. It was specifically intended for that delegated access. Then they came out with OIDC, OpenID Connect, as a formal way to support the fact that you've logged in with another application and separate from the idea of the delegated access and authorization.
gotcha, yeah, yeah. In fact, I think I'm guilty of that back in the day.
Yeah.
So
Well,
so, yeah,
that's
there's that.
exactly why I can't decide if Corey's comment is saying I said the flow's wrong or if people were using the flows wrong. I think I said it close enough to correctly, but if there's something I didn't do, and if you're talking about me, clarify that so we clarify it for everybody else.
I think he
Um,
mentioned that before he said that before you said anything, so people
okay.
yeah,
People
people
were,
are.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yep, perfect. And yeah, that's exactly what it was. And all of that was kind of built on the fact that people would build applications and they would say, hey, like if you want me to if you join LinkedIn and you want me to send an email to all of your email contacts, just give me your username or password and I'll log into Gmail for you and I'll just message everyone and tell them to join LinkedIn. That's
Yeah.
where the need for OAuth 2 came in, of being able to do that delegated access and not giving an application your direct credentials, because then they could go in and actually wipe out your entire Gmail account and not just have limited scope of what they had authorization to do.
Damn, there goes my business of wanna buy more followers? Give me give me your username and access to your
Yes,
Instagram account, and you can buy more followers from me.
exactly.
Free 99. Uh, yeah, so, I definitely think I was, guilty of that if I vaguely remember and recall, past experience with that. Okay, so that's good to know. I think I had the right idea with that, and that's a good validation for me. Um, there's a couple other things I wanted to unpack from that too. So, some things that I've seen, like, on the I think regardless of whether I think it's only with OIDC, OpenID Connect, where it's often implemented or used with where the result is what's called a JWT, right? JSON Web Token. Um, but when it comes to OAuth, it tends to be what is described as an opaque token, which I never really liked that term. I don't know why it never like clicks for me, opaque, but it means it's just like some gobbledygook that you can't really understand, right?
Yeah, and the phrasing doesn't make sense to me either, to be quite honest. And
Okay.
I think so. Again, people in the chat, make sure to double check. It's funny how when you don't talk about these things for a year, it gets a lot harder to talk about them after. But OAuth 2, there is no spec that requires the token to be a JWT, a JSON Web Token.
Mm.
It's just an artifact of some sort. Will, thank you for the support of celebrating me explaining OAuth 2 and OpenID Connect. So I feel like this is a hell of a lot harder than it would have been a year ago.
Yeah.
But there's no requirement on the spec for the token coming out of OAuth 2 to be a JWT. However, OpenID Connect, as you said, is required based on the spec to be a JWT, a JSON Web Token.
Okay.
The other, going back, the OAuth 2 token can also be a JWT. So in Auth0, it is not a JWT by default. It is an opaque token. Opaque basically meaning to you, this token means nothing. So
Mm.
without you having the database that like is associated with that token string that has the record for the other things that are relevant for it, without you having access to that database, because that's all in Auth0 in this case,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean anything to you, versus a JWT can have all the information depending on what you need already inside of it, formatted for you.
Yeah. All right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Drop it like it's
Yeah, we can,
JWT.
people can throw in their
Oh,
favorite
don't get me
pronunciations
started
of
on that,
JWT,
Robert Tables.
which is not it's not jot for me. Yeah, I don't, that one blows me away. I don't understand
I'm the same. It bugs me. Why do we call it
that.
jot? Why is that agreed upon? Is it like to me, JWT is simple enough. I don't need to shorten that any further. Jot.
Yeah. I don't know. Ryan Roga has an interesting question. I don't know if I would have to kind of see the conversation to answer this, but he asked, why do so many experienced people say never use JWTs? One, I think JWTs are like still misunderstood of how they work. Like I heard about JWTs for 3-4 years before getting to Auth0. I was like, how the fuck would that work? Like how you've got this
Mm,
token and you can just pass it around, but no one else can know what's inside of it, or they can know what's inside of it. But then
yeah.
how do you know it's a real token? Like those details make a huge difference. And then I think also probably part of that is just, again, depending on the conversation, people are just used to doing auth the way they're used to doing auth,
Mm,
and they don't see the need for something new. The other thing additional to this, one of the big reasons that JWTs are super, super popular is doing cross domain authentication. So let's say you're logging into your view application and it's on a separate domain from your backend. I don't know if it is or is not, but if it was on a separate domain, cookie auth wouldn't work because those are on two different domains. So now you need something that actually goes from one to the other. And that's where JWTs can be passed, which probably is what you're doing, where you're getting a JWT inside of your view application, sending it along to your node backend, doing validation and verification on those JWTs on each route to check not only is it valid, but it also then this the user that this represents has the role or authorization to do the thing that it's actually trying to do.
Yeah. Well, so that's new to me to hear that people say never use JWT. You've heard that before as well?
I
Huh?
not specifically. I'm my guess is just those two things that I mentioned of like not quite understanding how JWTs work and or then people that are just doing auth and they've done it for a while and they're used to it and they don't see anything new. And you can imagine an older generation of developers not using Vue and still using templated things within the same framework application of their backend. So like Node and EJS or .NET and I don't MVC, I don't, .NET MVC. I don't even know what the like thing is these days, but I can imagine them just not seeing the use case because they haven't done anything newer. Not that what they were doing is a problem, just aren't doing some of the newer things that are out there.
You don't have to say them and talk, we don't have to beat around the bush. I'm talking about me.
Talking about
Say
Brian.
Brian.
People like Brian. Auth related questions. The first thing Ryan Rogan said, I've asked so many people auth related questions, and the first thing that half of them say never use JWT. I would love to
Really?
hear that conversation and either
Yeah.
be a fly on the wall or participate. The other thing is kind of the debate about where do you store JWTs? Do you store them in local storage? Is that safe? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. But so I have an opinion on this, but I don't know that I feel as strongly anymore because again, I've been out of this focus area. But when I was deep into it, I was very strongly against storing the JWT, especially in local storage. Maybe not so much in session storage because at least that has like a time to live associated to it.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
but even then, so from my perspective, from an application security standpoint, I think it's way harder to defend against cross-site scripting vulnerabilities in your application than it is to defend against cross-site request forgery. Now, I preface my answer with that because there's the two arguments I've heard in the past of whether you should store the token in session storage versus a cookie, is people say, well, if you store in a cookie, you're going to have to worry about cross-site request forgery. And then my argument is if you store it in session storage, you got to worry about cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. To me, it's easier to defend against cross-site request forgery because like the cookie space and that storage within the browser is so mature at this point, and there's so many security tools available to you there to ensure the safety of that as best as possible. Whereas I think, but maybe things have changed again. Like I said, from last I focused on this to now, the session storage side of things is not necessarily as mature from a security standpoint for storing that type of information. What are your thoughts?
Yes. So
You're reading chat. It's okay. I
yes,
understand.
I am. Michael Leando has a great comment that'll get me down one of these paths here in a second.
Okay.
So by default, Auth0 does not recommend, I love how I'm still speaking on behalf of them, does not recommend storing access tokens in local storage. Caveat to that coming in a second. Because of that, the SDKs that they have keep access tokens in memory. And the
Mm.
slight downside of that is every time you reload an application, that means it's needing to do a verification back to the Auth0 servers that you're logged in.
Oh, okay.
So there is like a slight bit of loading that does, and I think I forget the complicated aspect of this, but it's like iframes and behind the scenes stuff. But sometimes in some browsers, the iframe secret hidden iframe things don't work, and I don't know all those details very well. Will Johnson has a great link that people should go check out from the Auth0 docs. But the general recommendation before this caveat is to not store stuff in local storage. Going back to storing stuff in cookies, though, like you can still make, I forget what the two properties are, but you would make your cookies require SSL, so they would only work on SSL, and then also I forget what the name of it is,
HTTP
but
only.
HTTP only, meaning it's not available in the front end JavaScript. So those are two things that make a big difference there. Going back to storing access tokens in local storage, Auth0 does not recommend doing that unless you do these two things that Auth0 has. Yep, that Auth0 has in terms of functionality. Actually, it's maybe three. So refresh tokens.
Mm.
I feel like there's another word, and I have to. There's another word that comes along with those two things that you put in the chat. Refresh tokens are basically the idea that every time you use an access token to do something, you will get back a new one. So it's going to rotate those tokens. So one, you can set like a expiry time on your access tokens. You could set them really, really short. You can then say every time, um, I kind of said that a little bit off. With an access token, you also get a refresh token. You send those two things to the server. The server will validate both. It will then send back another access token. Even if that access token does expire and you have the refresh token, you can send that and then get back a new access token, which means you can make your access tokens very short lived and you can keep that refresh token to get new ones. And then, if in the case that someone is able to hack your site and get your access token, Auth0 has it where if they steal your access token, meaning my application has the access token saved in local storage, they also hacked it and have it in their whatever, just in code that they write. When they use that access token, Auth0 is going to say everything looks good, or the refresh token. Ah, crap. I'm mixing things up. Refresh token. So if they get the access token and refresh token, they send it off to Auth0. And right after that, or sometime after that, the application that has the original ones that should be true try to use that same credential. Auth0 is going to shut the whole thing down. And Auth0 has a history tree of all the different tokens that have been generated from a single refresh token. And so if they see it's refresh token reuse detection. So there's refresh token rotation and there's also the reuse detection. If Auth0 realizes that the same refresh token is being reused, it's going to shut all of those refresh tokens down. And so if they steal a refresh token and access token and they use it, it'll work successfully. But then if you then use the one that you thought was already good in your application, Auth0 is going to realize this refresh token has already been used and it's going to disable all the other refresh tokens that are out there, which is going to force a complete login for you in your application. And they're going to be screwed because that refresh token that they have is not going to work anymore. So
Folks,
the two things, yeah, this is deep. The two
this
things,
this is why
let
you
them do
sign
it and
up for
not you.
something like Auth0 and you don't do this yourself. This is the one
Yes.
bit of advice I always talk about when it comes
Yep.
to, like, especially authentication. Sorry, go ahead.
Unless you're balded bearded builder. What's it? Bearded builder
Yeah,
who
triple
said he just built
B.
it and saves passwords and never has a problem. So to hopefully maybe clarify again, there are refresh tokens in general. There is token. What? God, these damn phrases. Refresh token rotation, which is every time you use a refresh token, you get back a new refresh token. And then the third thing is Will has it refresh token automatic reuse detection, which says if I get a request from a refresh token that has already been used, I'm shutting the whole club down. I'm kicking everybody out and I'm making them re-authenticate to get a new refresh token.
Okay.
Hopefully that's
No, that
helpful.
helps.
Super helpful links in the chat for people for the documentation that people are sharing. So go and do that too.
Yes.
shut the club down. Is that what Will are you talking about? The great analogy. In short, in 2023, don't roll your own auth or payment system. I mean, it
Yes.
really like it that seems like really simple, like or just really obvious for all the like exactly how you said it. And I'm on the same thing.
Well, my whole thing is, like, I don't want that responsibility as a
Yeah,
developer,
no,
right? Like, there's a
no,
lot implications involved with doing that, and I'd rather be like, "Hey, Auth0,
do
we
that for
we
me.
had a problem here. You're on
Yep.
the hook now. You
Yep.
know, this is why we're
Exactly.
paying you."
Well,
So,
and that's what like you still get a lot of people who will, and fair, like whatever works for you. And if you never have problems, great. But people arguing for like, I'll just build my own. And to a certain extent, like doing basic auth is not that hard. Like you can hash and salt a password. You can do basic things, but once you get into implementing flows like that, generating tokens, like you can generate a JWT and you can do stuff with it and you can validate it and you can it like can be pretty good, but you get down to these like deeper use cases of like, all right, I want to be really safe, so I want to shorten the time to live the expiry date on a JWT. But then from a user perspective, I don't want them to have to log in every 60 seconds or whatever. How do
Yeah.
you solve that? And then how do you add things like passwordless login and password reset and like all these things that you could layer on top of it adds up really, really quickly.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds great to me, though. It sounds like a lot of fun to spend time doing that. I like recreating the wheel, don't you?
Yes.
In
Love
fact,
it.
I don't use any open source libraries or anything. I write everything myself from
Build it
scratch.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
that's the way you gotta
definitely
go.
one of the best developers I've ever been around was also one of the most stereotypical. I don't know why you'd use a framework. I'll build everything myself.
Uh,
And like part of it is like that's cool, but you realize not everybody on the team has the experience that you have, and we don't want to have to write all that shit ourselves or understand the shit that you wrote because we it's too complicated.
yeah, yeah. So did we ever land on a decision, the best place to store a JWT?
So in the
Cookies or
I
hashing?
believe the phrasing still for Auth0 would be like find a store JWT in local storage if you're doing those other things. Refresh tokens, refresh token rotation, and automatic reuse detection of refresh tokens.
Okay.
Otherwise, they store them in memory. And to be honest, like I'm not good enough at this to give you my take outside of what I know to have been explained at Auth0. Um Will is saying Auth0 recommends in memory.
Mm.
Can you double check just for me to make sure that am I wrong in saying that Auth0 is okay with local storage as long as you're doing those other refresh token thingies and features? Because that was my understanding, at least the last time I was there, but I haven't been there in a while. In
I see.
memory for web apps for mobile, you could use secure storage. They have, and Joey is on Accordion Guy. Joey is at Auth0 as well and does a lot in mobile. So he's saying you could use secure storage. If you're on the same domain, like all this stuff, most of this stuff goes away because you can store stuff in cookies with those two properties that we talked about earlier.
Yeah. I like Pavi's answer. I don't use any frameworks. Chat GPT will do everything for me. It's all the rage nowadays, right?
I know. Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah. Go ahead.
so, in the sense of the architecture, we've kind of bounced back and forth. Going to your question of like, are we gonna have a standalone front end that then calls into an standalone API, or is it gonna be hosting on the same domain? Like to my detriment, we flip flopped a lot because of me and through my research and exploration of all this. But I think we'd like to have so getting back to the specifics, we're using Vue.js for the front end just because, not for any particular reason. My colleague just wanted to go with that, and I'm like, all right, let's roll. And then we're using Node and TypeScript on the back end and Express. And the well, you know what? Let's how about we bring up my
Yeah.
screen here? Because last stream I fumbled with draw.io, which was not a fun user experience. I'll make it a little bit bigger in case people need to see. Um, because I'm not that familiar with it, but at least kind of somewhat gets the flow down. So we have our Big Fix app, which you can kind of encompass it with our let's assume it's like a traditional application where the front end is hosted from the back end and everything's all in sync in that regard. It's not standalone. Then we have
So these
Auth0,
are
and then
on. Sorry, these are on the same domain, meaning
yes, let's say
the
that
front
for
end and the
this.
back end are on the same domain.
Yeah, let's say that for this
Okay.
purposes right now. So a user comes in, they want to sign up with the Big Fix app. We send them over to Auth0 to do the whole login flow, authentication flow to get using passwordless with the email link kind of thing. So they come back, and then we have that information, and like just an email is all we want really for this piece of it,
Mhm.
this leg of it. So then from there, uh, so getting back to the context of like this whole app purpose for this event, we want to have access to their Sneak account, which is separate, right? We don't right now
Mm.
have a way where you can authenticate with Sneak, like an
Yeah.
OAuth type of thing. Maybe, maybe not, right? But like ideally, that would be great because then we can kind of skip all this, still use Auth0 to kind of do that for us, the whole flow. But um, that would help solve some of the challenges we're running into. But so that's not the case. So what we do then is we say, okay, this user's authenticated. Now we need to go over to the Sneak API, and we have a thing called Sneak Apps basically that helps with this too. And it says, all right, I want to I want to allow the user to give us, the Big Fix app, permission to their Sneak account so that I can then read the projects that they have in Sneak and know of what vulnerabilities, not really the vulnerabilities, but like a count of the vulnerabilities really. We're trying to keep it as minimal as possible because there are some like legal and privacy and certain implications of knowing too much for the purposes of an event like this. So we really just want to know like what's the number of vulnerabilities for a project? What's the level of them? Are they high, critical, medium, low, that kind of thing? Because that's going to help us for this competition calculate a score for them as they progress and fix some of those vulnerabilities. So we're getting access to their Sneak account, and that gives us back a token as well, an access token, a JWT, um,
from Sneak.
from Sneak that now we can use to. So this actually should be more, maybe not the Sneak. Is it the Sneak API? I forget, but you can think of it as the Sneak API. We get authorization and an access token to then make requests to the Sneak API on behalf of this user now to get information about their account with Sneak. So we have login with Auth0 and then authorize with Sneak to get information about their project and that kind of thing. That sound good? All hunky dory? Everybody on the same page there?
This is actually makes sense what you're trying to do. This is actually something I've never gotten that far down, is how
Hmm.
to do that second step, because the credentials that you get back from Auth0 don't help you at all with then going to Sneak, unless there's some sort of like actual integration with Auth0 and Sneak. I don't know if there is. I'm assuming you've looked for that.
No, and that's yeah, that's exactly what's been part of the challenge is
Mhm.
how do I marry these two things, right? I have a user that's authenticated with Auth0, and then I have authorization for that user's account with Sneak. How do I connect those 2 in a safe and secure manner? And so, to spare people like the nitty-gritty, I spent hours banging my head against the wall on this
Mhm.
kind of thing too, which is what led me to reach out to you to say, "Hey, where could be maybe, possibly you can point in the right direction and I can dig into it deeper." But can I can I create my own new session now, server side, that keeps track of my Auth0, the user's Auth0 state or session, authenticated session, and also the Sneak API, you know what I mean? Like, I set up my
Yeah.
own cookie now, right? What would knowing that this is the context, what might be the best way to marry these 2? The term I keep going to is the state, right? I'm in an authenticated state, and I'm in an authorized state with 2 separate entities, and I need to marry those 2 things together. What would be a safe, secure way to go about doing that? And
Yep.
keeping track of that,
In
so
your
that,
application,
they
so you
come back
know.
to the app, right? And we know
Yeah.
that they have already gone through all that stuff, and we don't have to make them go through that flow again
Yep.
until things expire, let's say.
Yep. So there's a couple comments in the chat. I think Corey and Jess both mentioned Auth0 actions. Do you know what Auth0 actions are or is?
Very high level, like, I know of them, and I know one of the avenues I went down because I don't wanna get into the weeds on things too much and bore people. We have, like, I've been dabbling where I've been spinning up things for under my own, like, Clarkio account to just practice, and then I have stuff that's under officially with Sneak.
Mhm.
And the one weird thing, and the reason I'm bringing this up is, like, when I signed up with Auth0 with Sneak, I think we configured it in such a way that the access token was returning the email as or the JWT, or this actually leads to another question, sorry. There's an ID token, and then there's an access token too,
Mhm.
which is somewhat confusing to me what the difference is between those, but let me
Yep.
pin that for a second just to finish the thought. In any case, I'm getting an email from the user when I log in via the Sneak client ID and credentials that I need to use for that instance of the app. When I do in my own, I found myself having to set up like a custom action to say, "Hey, include the email
Yeah.
into that,"
Okay.
which I don't know why I did that. I think obviously I feel like it's a misconfiguration on my part, but that's my to answer your question, that's my experience with actions. Done.
Yep. Fair. Yeah. Fair enough. So Auth0 actions in general is kind of a way for you to customize the authentication workflow and inject code in that process to do additional things. So if, for example, like one common scenario for me is in applications, Auth0 handles authentication, but then I also want other data in my own database associated with that user.
Yeah.
So I would create like user profile record inside of my own database in Auth0 Actions when the user signs up for the first time, as an example. So just a way to like intercept and inject logic into the sign up or login workflow. And another common thing is to add additional properties
Mm,
to, for example, the access tokens middleware for Auth0. Michael's got it. I think that's a great short answer. So here's the disconnect though of why I'm not sure that works
okay.
is, and this starts with a question. What, when you make that call to the Sneak API,
Mhm.
what credentials are you sending them to then validate the user? Like you're needing at some point their actual username and password, right?
I don't, but you're
But
right.
they,
That is part of the flow that has to happen. Yes.
like you would kind of do the way you would redirect to Auth0 to handle authentication and come back to your application for the authentication. And that side is like that's also another thing you have to do where you redirect over to Sneak, let them log in, grant access. So these are two distinct separate OpenID/OAuth2 on Auth0 side, and then OAuth2 workflows on the Sneak side. The
Yes.
the reason I don't think that Auth0 Actions can solve that, uh, I don't actually know this. I don't think Auth0 Actions has the ability to do that redirect workflow
Mm,
because I don't think it has the ability to like handle coming back again. Because
okay.
because you're in this middle land of serverless stuff that you don't control.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that you can then, okay, Will is saying redirects and returning. The short answer of
Mm,
this is like we probably need to get you to someone more technical on Auth0 and specifically with actions.
sure, yeah. That's fine.
One thing that I think to get a like real answer, but this is a great discussion and super helpful to have people here in the chat too. One the simplest thing that I could think of, and I'll get you connected with Auth0 people if you're not already. The simplest thing I could think of is thinking of these as two very separate things, where you do the login flow, authentication with Auth0, you're back, the user is logged in. From there, Ryan, yes, people are on both Twitch and YouTube, which is confusing for chat. Um, so that's a complete, think of that as a completely separate thing. Then when you're in an authenticated dashboard, you can have a button that says go and do this thing
Mm,
with the OAuth2 workflow for Sneak. And I would imagine that OAuth2 workflow for Sneak is documented. The probably you have to then have code for when they get redirected back to your application to parse basically the access token coming out of the redirect.
yeah.
And then you would save that in your own database
Mm, yes,
and
potentially.
have that be associated with the user ID of the user coming out of Auth0 and have that relationship of user ID Auth0 um, to whatever unique identifier they have in Sneak.
Yeah. I think I'm following everything that you just said there, and that's kinda where my thought process was going along with my colleague that's also working on this. Um, and it is all redirect. So, yeah, it's essentially doing the same flow twice, once with Auth0
Mhm,
and then once with Sneak to help clarify for folks that are mentioning this in the chat too or wondering. Um, and
and
essentially, yeah, I just need, like, an ID, an email from Auth0, and then the access token from Sneak, and if I can keep where I store those, that's the next question to maybe try
mhm,
and ask here is, like, what's the best way to handle that? Like, do I store that in a database like you suggested, or do I keep that session? Or maybe the session's only available if it is a traditional type of app where everything's hosted under the same domain, whereas if it's not, then, we have a separate SPA and a separate API, right, under different domains, then we have to find an alternative solution to that, which is also has its own learnings to take away from, right? Um, so these are all these things I'm glad we're having this discussion. I don't think we're gonna
mhm.
solve everything
Yep.
right here and now. I didn't expect that, but, um, a lot of it has been very thought provoking already, and seeing
Mhm.
people in chat with their suggestions, so
Yep. Yeah, I feel like this would be a good relationship for Auth0 to invest in too, and maybe there's a way for I don't I'm speaking for everybody on their behalf, but, like, for Auth0 to invest time and, like, really kind of do an architecture review and helping you do that, and then also maybe, like, authentication powered by Auth0, like, logo or something on there. I'm speaking for
ooh, yeah.
everybody out of turn, and I don't
Yeah,
represent
yeah, yeah,
anyone
no,
here, so just an idea for people to talk about later on.
sounds cool
Um,
to me.
but I don't so one thing I'm thinking about is you don't actually have any need, I don't think, for any sneak tokens in the front end of your application.
No, no, and I think we kinda have been wanting to stay away from having to do
Yep.
that
Yep.
because that token's got a lot of, capabilities to
Things
it,
they
you
could
know what I
do.
mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay. So what we're talking about is just like I guess you could attach it to a cookie, an HTTP only cookie, but only so that you get that token faster when you like let's say
Right.
you're making an API request to like you go through the authorization with Sneak, you have the access token, you've got it saved in your database, and now you want to hit a button that says like load projects or whatever. You're gonna send a request to your backend API. In your backend API, you're gonna validate the JWT coming from Auth0 to make sure this request is coming from an authenticated user. From that access token, grab the ID of that user. Then you're going to go in your database and you're going to say, for this Auth0 user, do I have a token already saved for Sneak?
Mhm.
Grab that token, use it to make a request, get the data back, and then send that data back to the front end.
Yeah. Which is a lot of hopping around, a lot of potential points of failure to slow down. And, like, this isn't a huge. I mean, we were discussing this too, it's like because 'cause we've been kind of almost preemptively optimizing, you know what I mean? Over engineering a little bit in terms of the architecture and stuff, thinking, "Well, we need to be able to scale every little thing." And I'm also thinking like, "Well, do we really know how many people?" We're not
Yeah.
dealing with, like, an online website or, dealing with checkouts like Amazon or something, right? This is maybe a few hundred participants, I don't know, maybe 1,000, something like that. Um, we don't I don't know the exact numbers from, like, how many people participated
Yep.
last event
Last year.
either, so right, but you get an idea. It's not that much, and also concurrently, not necessarily all of them are gonna be doing that at the same time
Hmm.
too, so that's something to keep in mind as well. But yeah, I mean, we don't want something that's gonna be we want the experience to be snappy, right? Uh,
Hmm.
regardless of all that, so, uh, yeah, cutting down on some of that aspect would be potentially beneficial.
Yep.
But the same thought process that you had and the way of implementing it, you saying that is helping giving me that validation because I'm like, "Okay, we've been going down that path too a little bit or thinking down
Cool.
that path,
Yep.
um, as well." So,
Yeah. I think the separation of those two things for me is important. And you can almost think of it as you could almost like code the two things completely separate altogether too. Like just
mm,
from like practicing. Like you could go create a dummy application in Node.js and create your handlers for like getting redirected back from Sneak to like prove that process and save it in a database. Because I think with the exception of the association of the user ID from Auth0 associated with the credential coming back from um, Sneak, that's the only association that you need. So if you work in a silo to just prove, hey, with a Node.js application, we have the ability to do OAuth 2 with Sneak, handle the redirect, grab the access token, save it in a database.
mhm,
I think that is like the significant part of this. But
yeah,
anytime you do, like I was always kind of interested to figure out that there was more the separation of those two. It like you kind of mentioned there's a lot of hops. I think that's just how it is.
okay,
I would be really curious to hear a more technical conversation of people with Auth0 actions, with people mentioning handling redirects and stuff. That could be super interesting.
mm,
And if that was something that was a reasonable implementation, that could be super powerful. I also don't know about this. This seems like a not good idea. But if you were in an Auth0 action, well, but Auth0 action, but you can't tell. Like, are you gonna have a button that says authenticate with Auth0 and let me grab your stuff from Sneak at the same time?
No, well, I mean, we could potentially, but right now it's, "Hey,
I'm
log
saying like
in."
you probably wouldn't,
Yeah.
because that's I've never seen a button
No, 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 yeah.
that
We're
says
not we're
that,
not like,
right? Like,
"Hey, here, we're gonna give you the whole kitchen sink. Let's go."
yeah.
You know, like, no. It's log in, and then once we know you're logged in, we're like, "Okay." At that point, we'll decide whether we know whether we have access to, you've already authorized the sneak or not, and if you haven't, show
Mhm.
the button, like, authorized, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you'll have to the interesting thing about that from the front end is you will have to marry up the context of the stuff that you get back from Auth0 in memory, namely the information that you get in the OpenID, um, and the ID token that comes back from OpenID Connect. In there, you can have properties like name and email to show in a nav bar and stuff, and
Yeah.
determine whether or not you consider the user logged in. But then to decide whether or not you have that access token is going to be a dynamic request to your backend. So after you've loaded and you know the Auth0 user is logged in and you show an admin page, now you're going to make a request for a yes or no, basically to figure out if the user already has a Sneak token, and maybe also then validate that that thing is not expired yet, and then
Hmm.
send back a yes to show that button. And you'd also keep state of like, have they already either you're going to show that button and or you're then going to show their actual projects that they've pulled already.
Yes. Yep. Question in chat from Jason Eric Davis: "Is BigFix app a protected backend?" Yes. The idea is, well, the API endpoints will be protected, but, like, the front door of it is not, because it's gonna be like, "Hey, you wanna join the BigFix, sign up," right? That kind of thing. And then that will trigger the Auth0 authentication flow, and then after that, then we say, "Alright, you need to give us authorization to your Sneak account to participate further," right? And then Corey's question: "Are people authenticating with the
Same
same
address.
address and provider in the front end as they use in Sneak?" Not necessarily. So I'm assuming, like, same email address is what you mean, Corey? Not necessarily. Um, yeah.
And
We
that's
have
where
no way of
my
really controlling that either, right? Because some people might just, user natural, like, thought and experience or behavior might be, "I'm gonna put in this email," but it's not the same email they use with their
as your
Sneak account,
account. Yep.
right? Because with Sneak, we have OAuth 2 providers where you can sign in with, like, GitHub, let's say, and your email with GitHub
Mhm.
might be different than what your personal email, normal
And
email
yeah.
is, right?
And that's where I'm specifically questioning whether or not Auth0 actions works.
Okay.
Again, like I'm this is all a talk out loud thing, but because those things are two completely separate accounts, Auth0 account and Auth0 account. Like it would be different if you were logging in through Twitter
Right.
with Auth0 and then you wanted to get access to the Twitter API,
Right.
then I think you could do that in actions and you could do all that together because you're like the user they're the same account. You're just doing two different things with it. But
Gotcha.
in this case, I think Corey's saying I don't think you need actions anymore either because
Okay.
those are two completely separate accounts. I think that doesn't actually make sense.
Alright, well, that's
I'm
good to
really
know. It's good to rule things out, right?
yeah. Check. Think it's something similar as what James is describing here. There's no better feeling in the world than to babble on about something technical and to have Corey support to say, maybe, maybe you're not so far off. So that's good. I'm actually really curious to see like when you talk to someone that can give you a more definitive answer than me. I'm really curious to hear where this goes. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I feel like already I've learned a lot, or got ideas from the discussion with you and the folks in the chat, so, I definitely have some things to track down and, look into further. I'm excited. I'm really having a lot of fun. You know how it is, James, in DevRel, like, you're on and off, it ebbs and flows in terms of how technical you
Technical.
start
Yep.
getting and everything, and I've been loving, like, my leadership's like,
Hmm.
"Hey, we got this event, we know you're interested in working on this thing, we're taking everything off your plate, this
Go
is your number one
go
priority, go," and
nuts.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I feel like a kid again. I don't know,
Yep.
so, um, I'm enjoying it, and I'm enjoying connecting with people like yourself and
Yep.
folks in the community, talking about it. I'm streaming it too, some of it, not all of it.
Yeah. I'll have to try to check out one of those in particular. Um, there's revertibles is wild. There's a
Mhm.
comment from Frank about account linking. Look into Scotch.io Easy Node authentication. Um, I'm not. Are you, if Frank? Are you referring to like account linking specifically? I'm assuming not because you mentioned node authentication article. I'm assuming you're not talking about account linking feature inside of Auth0. I'm assuming. Um, See, and this, and I still don't know that that's not the answer, but this video does make sense to me in a use of actions. Because what happens here is user logs in with Auth0 in the Auth0 action, similar to what I said before about like in my own database creating a user profile table.
Yeah,
Um, in this case, in Auth0 actions, if they're logging in for the first time, it's going to go and create their profile inside of Stripe. And the reason that makes sense to me is like one, you're creating that account in Stripe, but it's not actually like a user account. It's a user record in Stripe's database that you can then reference and have be tied together by the Auth0 ID. So I've done that as well, but
yeah,
that's different than having two separate user accounts that they log in with.
gotcha. I got you. No, I think I'm on the same page with you. That's interesting, an interesting use case, but I don't think it I agree. I don't think it applies here. Um, my other random thought is Ben here having that Auth0 shirt. I missed this was a missed opportunity. I have one of my favorite shirts is Auth0 shirt,
Oh
and
no.
I'm not wearing it right now.
Which one is it?
It's blue or like a what do they call it? The fairy weather blue or whatever it's called with the orange shield. It's just like that one, just not white, but orange.
Okay, nice.
My buddy, shout out to Tim Farrell, who still works at Auth0 actually.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he's the
Did
one
we
who
talk about him, that connection before? I feel like
I
we
believe so. I think
yeah,
so. I vaguely remember, but
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think they don't actually. Is it true, Auth0, like, you don't use the orange at all anymore? Is that right?
Oh, really? So it's like a
It's a
limited
retro.
edition.
Yeah, super limited edition.
Nice. I
Yes.
love that. I love that.
I think that's true.
I learned that
Th
some folks, from Auth0 are gonna be in London in mid-January as well, because 'cause I'm going there for Sneak Think, so
Does it look
any
like
of you
this one?
all
Sorry.
yeah, it's just like that one.
Okay.
You still got the tag on that and everything, huh? Look at that.
My wife has a box full of
Oh.
shirts. She's watching the stream and walked in and was like, "You mean this one?"
Nice, nice.
Sorry, I cut you off, sorry.
I don't even no, no, it's all good. I was saying, what was I saying? I learned from Tim that,
Mm,
Auth0 is doing, like, all hands or something like that in London, at least
mm,
for his team.
okay.
And we're going it's all around it's the same time that Sneak's doing one, so I'm gonna be there,
Oh,
hoping to
sick.
meet up. Yeah.
So you'll be there for an all hands? Huh? You What am I doing with this? Oh. Are we sending it to him? Is that what, are we giving away Auth0 swag on the stream? I don't She handed me this shirt. Maybe she means for this to be sent to you, or maybe it doesn't. I really don't know. So we'll tease that and make you think about it just in case.
That's
And
fine either way, that's cool.
then I'll figure out. She's just like opening the door and throwing shirts at me. And I'm like, okay.
Next, she's gonna have the t-shirt gun and
I
shoot me
know.
with it or
Yeah.
something.
And she'll come out with like hats and all sorts of stuff. So you said you'll be
Oh,
in London for an offsite as
my
well in
internet
January.
my
Are you
internet just
there?
blocked out. Yeah, I'm back now, sorry.
Okay.
A little hiccup. What was that?
So you'll be in
London.
London for an offsite for your team as well?
Yeah, yeah, it's,
Cool.
the week of the 15th or 16th, depending on if you start on a
Sweet.
Sunday or Monday.
Mm.
That's up for debate too, I think.
Is it? Is that up
D
for debate?
Does the week start on Sunday or Monday? What do you think? We can stop
Well,
sharing my screen too, but
I
I think at this point, right? Do
I
we
feel
need to
like
see more of this?
I enjoy having Ben on screen. It makes me
Okay.
feel like makes me feel at ease just knowing Ben is there. Thank
There
you.
we go.
So it's me, Brian, and Ben.
Tell us
Can
more, Ben.
somebody at Osira please screenshot this and tell him that he made an appearance in our stream? um, but I would like um Sunday. I mean that like, it literally starts on Sunday, right? Like, what's the?
You and my wife are in agreement. Me, I think it starts on Monday.
I was hoping you would be one of the people that's Monday so we could have the controversy on string.
You got it, yeah. Monday for me, man. Sunday's part of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, like, mentally, I definitely feel you. Jess, don't do this.
There we
Don't
go,
do this,
see?
Jess. Mentally, yeah, but, like, officially, it starts Sunday, right?
I think you're right. I think I mean, I don't know who's the official
The
person
official
to
decider.
decide on this, but, like, yeah, most calendars list Sunday as the first day of the week. I'll
Yeah.
give you that. I'll give you that.
And
But
I
those
will
calendars are
also
all
give
wrong.
you I will not give you that, but I will also give you that Monday definitely feels like the start of the week and Sunday is part of the weekend.
Yeah. I think that's why. That's my mentality around it is because of that. So, literally the Greeks. Okay, fair enough.
I love you put the literally like conversation ender. Literally the Greeks. There's no more.
Mic drop.
Yeah. I forgot to call out earlier, revertibles. I forget what it was, but you did a message in here that was like a D&D scenario. Oh, it was talking about how we're having these technical conversations and how it seems like D&D because it's like one person would be like, "Well, what if we try doing this thing and blah blah blah," and the other person's, "Yeah, but did you think about if you do that, then this other thing?" And it's like this endless conversation of like always trying to figure out how to get around all these scenarios.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I have a strong interest, not well, I don't wanna say strong. I am quite interested in D&D and D and that kinda stuff, but I just never
Mm,
I don't know, never took the initiative to,
yeah.
uh, get be participate, so
I never have either. I think I would have a lot of fun. The big thing that intimidates me is I feel like you can't start and play for 30 minutes. And
right.
like all I hear is like, all right, get ready for this like 3 or 4 hour thing. And I'm like, that's a lot of time. Like I could do a lot of other things, even though that might be fun. In fairness, I also play like golf for 4.5 hours at a time. So it's not that I don't do activities that long. It just seems intimidating.
Yeah, yeah. I feel you on that. It seems like quite the time commitment.
Um, so Michael Lindo is asking about revertibles like convertible. Nice rhyme, by the way, and not a Bobby Tables meme.
It is a Bobby Tables.
Yeah. Um, yes, I think it is. And then I actually got this from Corey Weathers because
Yeah.
I always said Robert Tables, and I heard Corey Weathers on stream say revertible, and it just sounded like one of the coolest names ever. So I've adopted revertibles, and I believe revertibles has approved this for us
Yeah.
to use. So anyway, both a meme and a mispronunciation. Not his real name at all, by the way,
Right, yeah.
which took me a while to learn. I didn't know that for for a while.
Yeah, it's a good name, it's a good moniker to have.
Hmm. Actually, named David, something completely unrelated.
I think I first learned that from Robert Tables, now that this is turning into a Robert Tables discussion stream. Um,
Nice.
I first learned that his name wasn't Robert because he shared, like, a GitHub link, and I was like, "Who is
Yeah, who
this
is this David
who's
guy?
this David guy?" Like,
Why'd you send me this random guy's profile?
I was like, "At least it's GitHub, so I feel like it's a safe link, but this doesn't look like a Robert Tables link to me." Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Poindexter, is that right? I
Yeah.
just now looked him. I think that's right.
You doxing him
Um,
on stream now? Look at you.
doxing? What does that mean?
You're giving away his,
Like outing him?
yeah.
Is doxing a thing?
Yeah.
I don't know doxing. Doxing.
No?
Sounds cool.
Sounds cool.
Exposing. Thanks, Mark, for the definition. Exposing his secrets. Is that a word that other people know? Like, am I just totally out of the loop and should know what that is?
I don't know. I'm not, like, judging you or anything like that. It's just something that I have, I
I'm
don't
not
know, I
judging
just
you.
picked
It's
it
just
up, I
something
guess.
that like normal people would know if you were a normal person, is what you're saying?
M. Huggins is saying yes. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
thing.
So
So I was
Mark can tell me.
like
Um, and then on YouTube, X Solo, doxing is making private data available to the public without a person's consent. That's true.
well, in fairness, I think he's streamed before and shared this information, but I'm just yeah. Anyway, we can move on.
Were there any other? I feel like we kind of probably hit like the neither one of us have the answers, the specific enough answers to do anything else. But was there any part of the authentication piece that you wanted to chat about?
I think if it can be I don't wanna take up too much of your time either, and I think you usually kept these around an hour and we're there, but, uh, the other question and we don't have to go into details on it, but the other question I think is, uh, around architecturally, does it make more sense to have everything hosted in the same domain? Or because I feel like that simplifies it a bit, or does it make more sense to have the front end hosted separately than from the API? Um But
I
that's something I think we could decide, but it does cause
Yeah.
implications in terms of the authentication and keeping track of that
Mhm.
authenticated state.
I would say keep them together. Mark Huggins is saying keep them together. I think for the point that you said, but I think at that point like a lot of it just comes down to like developer workflow too. So one of the things that I'm looking to do, which I guess is not quite the same thing. Yeah, so there's a difference between these two things. But one of the things that Mark is actually looking at helping me doing is creating a mono repo for the Learn Build Teach Discord bot as well as the Learn Build Teach website.
Nice,
Creating a
okay.
mono repo doesn't necessarily mean that those will be hosted from the same domain though.
Yeah,
Because they could be in the same repo but deployed to two different places. But I would keep them in the same one. Especially for like think about like onboarding developers and testing and stuff. Oh, you could also do it at like a subdomain. Does subdomains work with cookies and stuff? Yes. Yes. Probably because it's at the same root domain.
I think so, unless you specify, right? I think there's a or you know what? I'm thinking it's path. Cookies you set by path, right? You can specify by path.
Marcus saying Marcus and not Marcus, but Mark is and also Michael are saying those work. Yeah, so you could host it under a separate subdomain if you wanted to.
Mm,
But yeah, I think also just for testing and stuff, like it's not two projects that you have to download and run separately to work with each other locally.
right.
And then you can also just do like slash calls to your routes too, instead of having a hard code like what domain you're making the request to.
Yes, right, and then that's yet more environment variables you gotta wrangle together and make sure you have right in each environment,
Hmm.
right? That kind of thing. Okay. Alright. I think we've come to a good point in terms of, like, answering a lot of the questions, and we have the things that aren't answered, I have at least, I have a path to kinda head down to explore. So,
Yeah. Question from Robertables, also David Poindexter. Haha. um, if you want to answer that for him.
serious question, Brian, do you wanna make a small increment plan to vet out the things you are learning at each step of the way, rather than boil the ocean trying to get the whole architecture exactly correct? Um, I don't know why I think my brain's getting fried, at the end of the day here kinda thing. And I'm not
Of like,
grasping exactly what we're thinking about doing here, but basically, make small increment plan to vet out the things. Oh, yeah, we probably need to do that, but that's something that I need to do with, more so my colleague that's also collaborating with me on, which we do. We are kinda doing that, we just don't have it written down, which is we probably should. That's a good suggestion, Robert Tables. Like, for instance, I've since moved on actually from this focus area, and I'm looking into the database side of things, what we're gonna do there. Um and, what are some of the like, I started exploring last night, Prisma, which is really
mm,
pretty slick stuff, and interesting. Um, so, yeah, we should do that, Robert Tables. I don't think we're gonna do it right now, yeah. How to follow up after that comment for context. For example, make a small auth step, do a pen test, do another step, see what you can access/exploit, repeat. Yes. Yeah. Well, the good thing is working at Sneak, we have quite the access to security professionals, researchers, and pen testers that will do a way better job than I ever could at something like that. And so that is definitely part of the plan to have them kind of, run through poking at it and seeing what they can do so that we can make sure we're good. Because when you run such an event that's built for people to try and hack or fix things that are hackable, they're gonna try and tinker around with the thing that they're using for that event, right? Like, that's the biggest thing that's stressing me out is, and that's why I'm harping on this, and I'm again, I can't thank you enough, James, and the folks in chat that have been part of the discussion and for the opportunity just to be here to discuss it, James. Um, because I wanna make sure I get this right, for such a situation.
Try to hack me. Wait, not like that. Jess, got a drop. Thanks for joining, Jess. Roberto will says Prisma is dope. Prisma is dope. Um, I love Prisma. Also, like other cool things in that space. Zeta is something I've used recently, serverless database that can generate TypeScript types for you and a library to give you similar functionality to Prisma. And then
Mm,
also, I'm a big fan of Supabase, and I'm using it. I've been working with it recently a lot on migrating Learn Build Teach Bot and website, and having the authentication piece like built in there is really
mm.
nice. Sorry, I'll see her, but like having that whole package together as well as like the database API layer in JavaScript functions, super super nice.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the beauty. It's a blessing and a curse, right? There's so many
Hmm.
possible options and avenues to go down. I mean, we've already seen that with just like authentication.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like it's one of the exciting things of so many technologies, and then it's like also can be overwhelming of too many technologies.
Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't think of that because I recently watched your video on the Zeta stuff that looked really
Hmm.
interesting to me too.
Yeah, I'll be doing multiple pieces of content in the new year starting in January for at least 4 months. So I'll have at least one piece of content with them per month for 4 months, which I'm super excited about because just like it's fun for products that you're already enjoying to then have like a paid relationship to continue to build cool stuff and teach people. So
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Something to look forward to in my YouTube
in your
subscription feed.
subscriptions. So Brian blew my mind earlier. It's funny. I'm a person who makes a living creating YouTube videos, and he was like, "Yeah, most of the time I just watch the subscriptions tab on YouTube." And I was like, "What is the subscriptions tab?"
Yeah.
And it's pretty self-explanatory, but it's just a button I've never clicked on. So I've never gone to my subscriptions feed in YouTube, and it looks so much better than the regular for you homepage feed. Um, so yeah, and then people are thinking of names for auth libraries that I should build. JAuth
I love it.
Q, Quick Auth, Auth Q Quick. Mark said he'd be overwhelmed without a subscriptions tab. Yeah, if
Did
I
your
built, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, sorry.
Um, XOLO said if I built an API company, it would be Quick API. There's a lot of branding that can be done with Quick. It works pretty well. What were you gonna
That
say?
I was gonna ask you about, like, did your parents know they were naming you in such a way that just, like, flowed off the tongue so nicely, like, and set you up for all this branding, this great branding?
I don't know if they like. I would assume they thought about the alliteration
Yeah.
for Quentin being my middle name, so that's what the Q is for. But I never like was never called James Q Quick because that's weird, right? But
Right, right.
until
That would be
actually,
really funny, though, now you got that in my
yeah,
James Q, quick, get over here. You're in trouble, boy.
that's exactly what it should be. But I don't know if you've heard the story. There's a football player who went to Louisville, went to the NFL, wide receiver named James Quick. So
Oh, wow.
SEO was just screwed. And
Yeah.
so I did the middle initial, and it made it like makes it unique. And the Qs are kind of special for me personally. And then also um, makes it unique enough to like find usernames and handles and stuff everywhere. So like domains and handles and stuff are a lot easier. So
Yeah. I'm envious. Brian
Brian
Clark
Clark
is,
has
definitely not
not so
SEO
much
friendly.
uniqueness.
Yeah. But on the other side, from a security and privacy perspective, I kinda blend in with the
Yeah.
rest of them.
They'll
You know?
never know which one you are.
Right. So
People are now trying to buy domains, so I can't create all these projects. Try living with Poindexter through your adolescence in the 80s. You know nothing of my plight.
Yeah.
Robertables, do you ever go to in-person events, conferences? Is there ever a chance that we'll meet in person? Also, where are you based, if you don't mind me giving away more of your information to
Well, I can
people?
tell you he sometimes does go because he just recently was at, AWS re:Invent. I know we were chatting about that.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
missed out on that
Robertables,
opportunity to meet him in person, actually.
that sucks.
Yeah.
That's the big thing about, like, traveling can be overwhelming, and then it also is just traveling a lot can be overwhelming, especially with family and kids. But there are also, like, really amazing opportunities out there to go to conferences and see people in person and stuff.
Yeah.
I do. I was a feature at the Indy AWS meetup. Nice. Then attended reInvent in Indy. Cool. Next time I'm in Indy, I'm sure it's not a big state. I'll just text you my address.
No, I was not at reInvent, unfortunately. Sneak was there, so, I probably could have gone if I
Mhm.
wanted to, but, it was right after the timing of it too. It was right after Thanksgiving,
Mm.
so kind of a
Yeah.
tight squeeze in between holidays to try and work in there, especially with family and stuff like that.
Mhm.
That's why, like, I'm really excited about going to London. I've only ever been in the airport before, like, traveling through kinda thing.
Mm.
I'm excited about getting to see it and experience it and be
Mhm.
with the team in person, right? I'm not
Cool.
excited about the traveling. I just don't like one day we gotta come up with a snap and be there kinda travel
Be nice.
opportunity. That would be great for me.
You wanna know a fun fact travel fun fact for me this year?
Oh, let's hear it.
I've been to London 3 times,
Dang,
which
nice.
is not, like not a super fancy thing, or not as fancy as it, like, sounds like it would be. But it just so happened that there were 3 different things that I went for. So 2 conferences on my own, and then I went along with Jess for her, um, team events in London and Berlin, so I got to tag along for those,
Oh, nice. So wait,
which is cool.
Auth0's already been they've already kinda did a thing in London this year. They're doing another I guess it's next year
Yeah,
though,
so I
right?
think yeah, and I think you said that was, like, a specific team offsite, right?
I'm not sure. I mean, I just know of, like, Tim
Something.
was telling
Okay.
me that
Yep.
he's going there with his
Yep.
team and potentially more.
Okay.
Yep.
And this was them putting on a public event,
Okay. I got
which
you,
was
yep.
fun. So that's a lot of what she does is works with the events and sponsorships and stuff. Michael has never traveled internationally. That's hard to believe. I'm surprised. I would imagine there would be more opportunities in the new year to do that. There was Sneak was at All Things Open, by the way, when I was there.
Oh,
I was like,
nice.
oh,
Did you say
I'm
hi
not as
say hi?
excited to go by when you're not there.
Yeah. Well, that's why I always tell people to, like, "Hey, go say hi for me,"
Hmm.
kinda thing to the
Yep.
folks that I do know that are going there. That's the thing, man. I mean, maybe talking a little bit about being in DevRel and that kinda stuff and having a family, I've significantly and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit offline, cut back on my travel
Yep.
just because I've got young kids and I don't wanna miss those
Yep.
important milestones kinda thing, and on top of it, I get a lot of anxiety traveling kinda thing.
Really
Yeah, so it's been better, and Steve's been super cool with that.
supportive of that. Yeah.
Yeah, supportive of that. I've done a little bit of traveling, like, I went to Texas, back in June for, Open Source Summit North America.
Mm,
Um, I went to Austin for the first time, which was cool.
nice.
I hadn't been there before,
That's
so,
cool.
yeah, I don't mind traveling a little bit. I just when I first got into
It adds
DevRel
up.
what's that? Yeah, it
It
adds
adds
up,
up.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
yeah. I was going a lot, and it was fun, but it's also tiring, and then, we were just starting our family at the time too, kinda
Hmm.
thing, having the first kid, and I was feeling guilty being away,
Yep.
so,
I think this year will probably have been the prime year this past year because Jess and I got to on our like separately go to the same events and then do it together. So
yeah,
separately meaning like for her work or my work and then
yeah,
go and do that travel together a couple of times. And that's like the coolest thing ever because all the anxiety of being away from home or a lot of it is gone because you're still getting to do it with that person and we don't have kids yet. So like the extra I don't know, anxiety that would go into that. So
right,
that was a ton of fun this year to have a few different trips. 2 of them internet like either we did like 2 or we did like 3 total trips and 2 of them were international together.
wow.
So anyway, so it worked out really, really well this past year.
Yeah, that's cool, man. I think I could definitely see that, yeah, of relieving a lot of the stress,
Mhm.
having, your significant other there with you, that's cool, that's awesome. I'm jealous even more again, like, that's awesome, man. Yeah.
She's calling me out for the one I didn't go to, which is in Sydney, Australia,
Oh,
which like that's just a far one.
yeah, that's
That
a tough
sounded
trip. Dang.
that sounded brutal. And I think I had like other things going on at the time, but that was one
Yeah.
I missed.
Another time. There's always
One
conferences
day.
with me, right? There'll be
Yes.
more opportunities.
Yep. I'm gonna definitely be more selective next year.
Yeah.
Partially because on my own now, it's not a company paying for it. So I have to make sure that like there's not a huge reason for me to be coming out of pocket for
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
need to make sure that all that stuff is covered, and just balancing the amount of time that that takes away from like regular productiveness at home.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I think about, like, companies I think they're like, conferences are definitely effective, but I think sometimes companies, lean on that a little too much, like, they put a
Mhm.
lot because the bang for your buck sometimes I don't know always adds up in that regard. And the reason
Yeah.
I bring that up is, like, I don't know, let's say I'm just throwing out a random number. Let's say traveling people there, setting up booth costs, equipment and food, whatever, board, um, let's say that's like 10 grand or whatever.
Mhm.
If you put that towards, like, building content and maybe it's a conference that has a couple thousand people at it, right? What's the average number of that, your booth and company is only gonna see X percentage of those people at the conference and interact
Yep.
with them. And of that percentage, there's only gonna be certain percent that's meaningful conversations that leads to some type of relationship with them professionally, like, and maybe, like, like, contractually or making money kinda thing. Um, so with that in mind, you could put that 10 grand towards, like, content creation or something, reach way more people, and probably have a little bit more I'm assuming more return on investment in that regard than going to a conference. That's kind of the thought process
Thought
I have
process
around
for
it too
you.
a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah. Again, there is something to be said about meeting in person, talking in person, and that kinda thing, and I still think it's valuable. I think, like you said, being selective is
Mhm.
key to that.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's been something people have started to think about more since COVID because of having thought about the impact that content has had during COVID and since. Although I got called out recently for saying post COVID now, and somebody was like, "We're not post COVID," and then went on to say like other much more dramatic things.
Mm.
So like the rest of the conversation probably wasn't super relevant, but I guess the relativeness of whether we consider COVID over is definitely open. My wife messaged me, and I'll give you a quote. She said, "Yo, can you get off this stream? I said I would walk while you were streaming. I'm tired." She got a treadmill under her desk for her birthday. So I'm thinking we stay on for another couple of hours and have her get some extra steps in.
I mean, I got the time. I'm following your lead, with your stream, so
Yeah,
I
I'm
I can
actually
I can chit chat and,
you
I
got plenty of
stream,
time.
so I can fill
I
time.
know. And now she says, quote, "Bruh." And then the next message will be, "Why are you reading these out loud?" And I'm like, "If you haven't gotten it by now, then I'm gonna read these out loud." You're not realizing how this is going. But I am gonna call it. I'm actually hungry too, so I'm gonna go get some food. This was super cool though. I like just like you said, I enjoy the technical conversations, especially when there's like not all the answers on either side, but get to kind of brainstorm. So I'll help you get connected with whoever on the Alcira side. I think having follow-up conversation to like get down to specifics of like here's what we really need to do would be really good.
Okay.
Hopefully it's somewhere similar to what we've said and we were on the right track. That'd be great. Um, and then I'd love to see like follow the progress as y'all make progress with everything.
Yeah, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for the opportunity, taking the time to, like, discuss it and help a fellow dev out to make sure I'm heading down the right path and connect me with, the right folks to ensure that too.
Yeah, man. And chat has been awesome. Thanks everybody
Yeah.
for hanging out and also participating and sharing links and asking questions and stuff. Y'all have been super good. Oh, Robert, I'm sorry. I'll have I'll have that working right now. I go back and forth on loading up my Twitch commands because I don't use them as much, but I did have a Discord command. You're right. So anyway, there's the Learn Real Teach Discord if people are interested in joining community and chatting more about stuff later on. But I'm gonna call it. Thanks everybody for being here. I had a ton of fun. I'll be back tomorrow morning with a live episode of Compressed FM podcast, followed by rating over probably to Clarkio's channel on Twitch. So make sure to check that out. Boom.